My compromise or arrangement is not in respect of buyback. My compromise or arrangement is with regard to merger or amalgamation or hiving off or demerger or whatever. And as a consequence, as a byproduct, there is small amount of buyback. So it's not a very strictly buyback. So again, this provision has been introduced only to avoid the argument of that Sterlite case where where Supreme Court said that 391 and 391 is a comprehensive section, and if anyone involves a scheme which involves a buyback, I can't stop. So SEBI wanted to interfere there. Now, the challenge here, what would happen is, forget the High Court. If you propose this kind of scheme, which has even a small amount or small bit of buyback, when the scheme goes to the stock exchange for approval, and the stock exchange, when it reverts back to the SEBI for its comments, SEBI might in its discretion say no, remove these buyback provisions. SEBI may just treat that part of the complex scheme which deals with buyback, SEBI may say just remove this, and they may completely upset the whole construct of the scheme. So that's the fear over here. But again, as I said, we'll have to wait, because this is just the beginning of the sections. The law, we'll have to see how it gets evolved. For the first time, they have introduced this provision 230 subsection 11, which says that a takeover, any compromise or arrangement may include takeover offer made in such manner as may be prescribed, provided that in case of listed companies, takeover offer shall be as per the regulations framed by SEBI. Now, to my mind, honestly, again with due respect to the legislature who has drafted this section, I don't think so they understood what they are drafting here. They just wanted to provide something for takeover offers. Otherwise, the takeover code is a comprehensive code in itself. When you never do a takeover offer through a scheme of arrangement or merger, because scheme of arrangement and merger, anyway under takeover regulations, any acquisition of share through the scheme of merger or amalgamation is exempted. So when you go through the court process, the SEBI takeover code doesn't get triggered. Now, we have to see and wait and see as to how SEBI reacts on this. What is the rules and regulations? What SEBI, whether it amends the takeover regulations or SEBI independently comes out with its own regulations on the listed companies, we have to wait and watch. But there is a provision now in the Companies Act which says that the compromise arrangement may include a takeover offer.
Is there anything to do with that Ultratech which was taken over and open offer was made into the unlisted company?
No, that this is not, I don't think so this is triggered by that Ultratech case. Nitin is referring to a very interesting case, and incidentally I happen to be working on that merger, so I know a little bit. Just to tell you the background, it was a demerger of cement plant of Larsen and Toubro into a new company called Ultratech, which was an unlisted company, and it was being acquired by Birlas. And because it was an unlisted company, because the demerger happened in an unlisted company, but they made an open offer to the shareholders of an unlisted company, though it was not required strictly speaking, because it was only a demerger, a classic demerger of the cement undertaking. So Birla had made an open offer on an unlisted company. The timing was matched in such a way that post demerger it would get listed, and as soon as it is listed, that the open offer would get triggered. Now, it was done basically primarily to give an opportunity to exit to the shareholders of the Ultratech cement division who came from Larsen and Toubro. But this is not for that purpose. I think legislature wanted to have this. This is a very innocuous provision, if you see, because it is neither here nor there. Because all that it says is that any compromise or arrangement may include takeover offer made in such manner as may be prescribed. So unless it is prescribed, we will not know. So it is just an innocuous provision, enabling provision to my mind. Put it in the sections so that if SEBI wants to evolve something on the takeover regulations, this could help. Maybe I'll tell you. I know for a fact there are certain cases, certain takeovers which has happened, which were structured to avoid the takeover regulations. They were structured as an amalgamation. They were structured as a scheme of compromise or arrangement, purely scheme of arrangement to avoid the takeover regulations. It was obvious that these mergers were done for the purpose of avoiding an open offer through SEBI. And SEBI also knew that this scheme of amalgamation or mergers are for the purpose of avoiding a takeover offer. So maybe SEBI wants to avoid. So like the buyback regulations, here also SEBI may come out with something, some such provision which will say that if pursuant to a merger or amalgamation, if it the impact of it or the effect of it is the acquisition of a listed company, then you will need to make an open offer. Some such provision will probably come out. So we have to wait and watch.
Some schemes, what happened, there was a scheme of amalgamation and a preferential allotment of shares, which was over and above the threshold limit under the takeover code. And the companies took a view that since it is a part of a scheme under section 391, takeover code is not applicable because there is an exemption of all the shares issued pursuant to 391, 394 schemes. I think the whole purpose of bringing this as a part of the Companies Act is to curtail those kind of practices where genuinely takeover codes were triggered, but it was given a alert that it is a shares issued pursuant to a scheme. So we have to be blamed for such kind of, some sort of, because professionals give these kind of innovative schemes to the corporate India that this is also possible and you can do away with the open offer requirements. In a way, it is plugging that loophole or interpretation issue which is prevalent in the earlier code.
But again, you are right, Sujay bhai, and you are absolutely right and bang on point. There were a couple of schemes, I just avoided to mention that, but there were a couple of schemes evolved to avoid the takeover code. Under the merger or amalgamation, promoters were given excessive shares through preferential allotment or through valuation exercises, whereby the promoter shareholding was increased. So essentially the objective was either to increase the promoter shareholding or to add a new promoter to the company and thereby avoid the takeover regulation. So this was the objective. Now, see, the challenge is, Sunil bhai, my friends, challenge is that we are living in a complex world. Not only complex, but we are living in a dynamic world, I would say. That is the correct way of putting it. Now, because of in the last 20 years, because of the foreign collaborations, joint ventures, private equity investment, ADRs, GDRs, various methods of capital raising, various requirements with regard to acquisition of undertakings, acquisition of brands, selling of brands. So, a corporation will need to restructure. Now, not necessarily, every structuring that we do or every structuring which is demanded by a corporation, not necessarily, it is meant only for the purpose of avoiding takeover. You see, I don't think so, people want, I'll give you a classic example. I was acting for an MNC friend, a very large multinational corporation, and they wanted to acquire the promoter shares. And the promoter shares were, I think, roughly 65 or 60, around 65%. And promoters said, we want to exit fully from the company because they were obviously getting a good price. The MNC said, and I was representing the MNC, we said that we'll acquire your 65, I think 65 or 70%, it was 65, and then make an open offer for 20, by that time it was 20%, now it is 25. So we'll make an open offer for 20%. So if we acquire 65 from you and 25 from the public, obviously public is going to sell because the very attractive pricing. So we'll cross 85. After we cross 85 and having acquired 85 up to 85% at an exorbitant price, what do I do? Because the SEBI guidelines say that you have to first comply with the public listing norms, which means you have to sell 10% shares and come back to 75%. And only then you can do a delisting. So we went to SEBI and we told them that, look, we are acquiring 65, we'll acquire 20 from the public, we grow 85. Immediately we want to announce the delisting, and probably delisting also will be on the same price, which is a really a fantastic price. We don't mind keeping that as a reserve price. We told SEBI that we don't mind keeping that as a reserve price, and if you feel that we should follow the buyback, the delisting pricing norms, we will follow the delisting price norms. And even if the delisting pricing norms, the reverse book building, even if the reverse book building is less, we don't mind paying same price, highest price. So we wanted to be absolutely fair from all sides. SEBI said nothing doing. If you cross 75, you have to come back to 75 and then do delisting. Which means you have to sell roughly 8 to 9% shares, and only then you can do. Now, having acquired shares at a exorbitant price, if you tell someone that just because your regulation is required to divest, if you start divesting 8 to 9% or 10% in the market, what would happen to the pricing? And why should a MNC who has come here to acquire a business be on first stroke itself made to suffer on the 10%? It was a huge, massive outlay of funds. And believe me, friends, only on this principal interpretation issue, they said we do not wish to do the acquisition in India. I mean, they walked off, and we lost a very good opportunity of having a very large MNC in this country. And believe me, I know for a fact I am advising them, continues to advise them, and they have now shifted their focus to Brazil and some other countries, and the country has got declared with really a good operation. Now, this is what happens, you know. So we are living in a dynamic world where it is possible the promoter shareholding may vary, and it is varying. Sometimes it is 40, 45%, 50%. There are private equity. Look at a complex situation where promoters are holding say 40, 45%, and 20%, 25% is held by say private equity investors. Private equity investors want to exit. Promoters want also to exit. What do we do? So we'll end up in the same situation now. Even if you go to SEBI with some kind of a solution which protects the price to be given to the minority shareholders, SEBI is not willing to look at that because SEBI treats it as they don't want to create a wrong precedent. Now, how it is a wrong precedent, I don't know. Anyway, so I guess this provision is meant to pluck those kind of situations, but again it will depend upon what SEBI comes out with. Fast track mergers. Now, this is a welcome step because for small companies or companies with holding and subsidiary relationship, those companies you don't need to go through the whole process of the mergers and acquisition. All that you need to do is you need to get 95% permission from the shareholders and majority of creditors representing 9/10 in value. If they confirm, then it essentially what it means is, this is prevalent in the overseas jurisdictions, you enter into an agreement for merger, and if the agreement is approved by the shareholders and creditors, the ROC approves it. Now, why yes, they say that it will be approved, but again this will be subject to various regulators, and that process is not given up. That whole process still remains, so you will have to comply with, you will have to give notice to ROC, income tax and everything, and subject to their confirmation, your scheme will go through. But this to my mind is a welcome step because I'm sure you know every company undergoes a lot of restructuring whereby the investment companies, small companies or subsidiaries, multiple subsidiaries, affiliate companies, we keep on merging. So this will be a fast track merger, will be I think is a welcome step. Now coming to the merger with the foreign companies. Now for the first time again friends, I am telling you this is only enabling provision to my mind. Because lot have to be done on this. It is not a simple process what they have mentioned. All that they are saying is that Indian companies can merge with foreign companies of a country with reciprocity and vice versa, subject to prior approval of Reserve Bank of India and subject to the rules made by central government. Now what does this really mean? Let's take a pause here and understand the concept and understand the repercussions of this. All this time, it is only two Indian companies could merge with a digital. The merger could happen only of the two Indian companies. The first time they are saying an Indian company now can merge into a foreign company, which means, take an example, A company, Indian company, merges into a B company in US or Switzerland. So the shareholders of A company will become shareholders of the B company. Now, it sounds very simple. In fact, since last couple of days I have been struggling to find out what could go wrong here and on what are the gaps. The first gap would be, if you are talking of a merger or if you are talking of an amalgamation, so the Indian company's existence will go. It will not remain a corporate body. It will stand merged into the foreign company. So what happens to the business here? What happens to the assets? How would the regulators or how would the law treat that asset? So to my mind, considering the existing regulations, the assets here or the business here would be treated as a branch office of the foreign company. Number one. Now, the minute we talk about therefore a branch office, which means it will be subject to RBI permission, depending upon the nature of the business, it will need the permission from the regulatory authorities. For example, if it is a telecom company, you will need approval from the telecom authorities. If it is insurance, you will need permission from the insurance authorities, and so on and so forth. So that's first part. Now let's look at the second part from the FEMA perspective. Today under the LRS, the liberalized remittance scheme, you can send up to $75,000 abroad to acquire shares individually. When it comes to the corporates or body corporate, they can remit up to 100% of their net worth in terms of ODI regulations. So if it is individual, $75,000 US. Earlier it was $2,000, now it is 75,000. Secondly, if it is body corporate, you can only up to 100% of the net worth you can remit outside. So when we are talking of a merger of an Indian company with a foreign company, and the shares that you get from the foreign company by virtue of this merger or amalgamation will be subject to this ceiling. I am again, friends, we have yet to see the guidelines which RBI will come out with. I am just throwing the current legislative, the problems or the gaps. I am only throwing some thoughts on that. So just now take an example. Now just take a little ridiculous example on this. Take an example of Hindustan Lever. It's thousands of shareholders. If this company merges into Unilever PLC, so the massive operations of Hindustan Lever currently in India, properties, brands, business, manufacturing, marketing, everything will get converted into a branch office of Unilever PLC. Thousands of shareholders who are holding shares, definitely more than $75,000 US. What would happen to that? So RBI will have to make, one way is that every individual will have to go to RBI and take permission, or company will have to apply and say that look, allow blanket permission up to $75,000, and beyond that let individuals apply or whatever. For corporates who are the shareholders in Hindustan Lever, it will be 100% of their net worth, fine. But this will have to be scrutinized. So RBI will have to, it will be a nightmare for really a company like large company to really merge into. Now,
in fact, that would also be possible. 75,000 in a year.
yeah,
So if somebody has remitted already, then 75,000
it's gone. Limit is gone. Limit is exhausted. Now, let's take an example. Why would a foreign company want to do this? Let's test it from the other side. Again, friends, we are just discussing and debating. I am not putting, don't take me so seriously and put any cases over. I am just trying, we are discussing over here as a professional body. All the MNCs here in India in the last couple of years, you must be reading in newspapers, they want to pay royalties, the subsidiaries. Now take an example where genuinely a merger takes place between an Indian subsidiary and it goes to the parent company and it becomes a branch office. So question of your royalty and everything, nothing will arise. They will be all profits will be their profits straight away. So they get out of all these requirements. They get out of SEBI listing requirement. They get out of all these disclosures and everything. Nothing will apply over here. So in a way, will it not benefit the MNCs who would like to take advantage of this? So we'll have to again, friends. This is to my mind. This provision is more because we have seen FDI regulations in the last 20 years. We have seen a lot of foreign collaborations, mergers, and there is a provision there are a lot of jurisdictions where cross-border mergers are allowed. So this is an enabling provision to my mind, and unless and until we see really the fine print, the devil will lie in the detail. So we will have to see the provisions, what RBI comes out with, what SEBI comes out with, all those things, and then only fine. The third challenge on this foreign company merger is, what if the we are talking of Hindustan Lever merger or any other merger, what if the country where the company is going to merge, that country requires the law of that country requires a specific approval of that court, for example. So therefore the merger between the two, an Indian company and a foreign company, will also be subject to compliance with the rules and regulations of law of that country. So that also will have to be abided. So unless we abide by those rules and regulations, so it will be subject to the pricing guidelines, subject to FEMA regulations, subject to regulatory authorities, and subject to the regulations of the law of that country. So it's not that easy. To my mind, this is just an enabling provision as a put up for discussion purpose. Over a period of time, I guess SEBI and government will come up with some law or some clarification, and we'll have some light at the end of the day. But still, for the discussion purpose, I would say this is a good starting point. At least there is an attempt, at least it has been provided that yes, you can do cross merger. Any questions on this? Yeah.
Sir, in India, is there anything really fast track? Anything fast track or because I find that basically the regulator, the administrators, everybody is starting with a distrust of business community. When you start, there is such a big gap is there. Any amount of such schemes, regulation won't work. Instead of catching and punishing the wrongdoer, they are creating laws whereby everybody is going to be guilty. Everybody is going to be a fraud. There is the mindset. With that mindset, all these things will remain on paper.
Anybody wants to comment on this?
I want your feedback because you have got a vast experience.
See, Nanipal Kiwala once had said, I think at a Churchgate or CCI, I think he had once said this, that the lawmakers in India don't make laws with positive mindset of making a law. We make law with a brief that if at all, if I was to make law on this, say, merger with foreign companies, I would not start with the thought process that yes, with a positive mindset that yes, I must provide a statutory framework, regulatory framework, whereby an Indian company should be permitted to merge in the foreign company. If that was my thought process, probably the law would be written in the positive language. My thought process would be, what if an Indian company tries to misuse this? Can he park funds abroad by doing this? Will he siphon off funds by doing this? You know, my mindset starts probing into questions as to what can be the misuse. Then what I do is I list out those misuses. I sit and discuss with my colleagues. He adds on to those misuses. And then when I draft the regulation, I start with the premise that these regulations will be misused and therefore I have to prepare a structure which is going to be foolproof to my thought. So when you read this, you will see the regulation is this cannot be done or this is subject to prescribed law. This cannot be done, this is subject to regulation. This cannot be done, subject to guidelines. So you will always find that look, the bureaucratic approach is that look, we will wait and see. These provisions which say that subject to prescribed law, regulation, guidelines is a wait and watch policy. They will see how people come out with. The minute they find some mistake, there will be regulations to plug up that hole. Now this is unfortunate.